Gentlemen, I'm going to be direct with you today. No sugarcoating. No dancing around uncomfortable truths. If you've been noticing weaker erections, softer performance, or reduced sensitivity compared to what you used to feel, I need you to hear something that most doctors will never say out loud inside a consultation room. It is not just about age. A significant part of the problem may actually be rooted in the way you masturbate. Yes, I said it plainly. The private habits you've quietly built over the years, the ones you've never questioned, the ones no one talks about openly, may be systematically training your body toward erectile dysfunction. And the reason this is so dangerous is that most men never connect these dots. They keep repeating the same 4 critical mistakes, year after year, without understanding what they're doing to themselves. They unknowingly weaken blood flow, numb sensitivity, and sabotage their own performance. And then they blame aging. They blame genetics. They never consider that the answer might be found in a habit they've practiced thousands of times in private. In today's video, I'm going to do what I believe a responsible clinician should always do: tell you the truth. I'm going to reveal the 4 biggest masturbation mistakes that set men over 50 up for sexual failure. And more importantly, I'm going to give you a clear, practical, and actionable framework for correcting every one of them naturally. No prescriptions. No procedures. No shame. Just applied science, honest guidance, and the kind of information men deserve but rarely receive. Stay with me until the end, because once you begin correcting these habits, you'll notice firmer erections, deeper sensitivity, improved prostate health, and a return of that confidence and vital energy that every man deserves to carry into the second half of his life. Before we go any further, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. And drop a comment below telling me where in the world you are watching from today. I've spoken with men from Lagos to London, from Toronto to Tokyo, from Johannesburg to Sao Paulo. This conversation knows no borders and no age limit. Men everywhere are dealing with this in silence. Let's change that together. All right, let's get into it. Here is the truth most men are never told. Erectile dysfunction is not simply an inevitable consequence of aging. Yes, testosterone declines gradually after the age of 30. Yes, blood vessels lose some of their elasticity over time. Yes, certain physiological systems slow down as the decades pass. But what the textbooks and the brief appointment slots fail to emphasize is this: the habits you practice, the patterns you reinforce day after day, physically reshape your nervous system, your circulatory function, and your hormonal response. This is not theory. This is measurable neuroscience. Think about that seriously for a moment. Your brain and your body are always in learning mode. Every repeated behavior becomes a conditioned pattern. Every pattern becomes a default setting. If you consistently use a particular type or intensity of stimulation, your system recalibrates to expect it, to need it, to require it before it will respond. And if that stimulation is unnatural, extreme, or artificially generated, your body adapts in the wrong direction. Over years, this means desensitization of nerve endings. It means disrupted circulation patterns. It means a hormonal cascade, dopamine, nitric oxide, testosterone, that becomes harder to trigger through normal, real-world inputs. And slowly, silently, performance suffers. But here is what I want you to hold on to throughout everything I share with you today. This is not a permanent condition. It is not who you are. It is a trained pattern, and trained patterns can be retrained. Just as wrong training creates dysfunction, right training restores function. The body is intelligent. It is adaptive. It responds to consistent input with consistent change. That is the foundation of rehabilitation. That is the foundation of this entire conversation. My name is Dr. Adewale Morgan. I have dedicated years of my clinical work to helping men navigate the complex intersection of urological health, sexual function, hormonal balance, and the psychological weight that comes with declining performance. And one of the most consistent patterns I encounter in my practice is this: men who are struggling don't lack willpower. They lack accurate information. They have been practicing the wrong habits for years, sometimes decades, without knowing it. And once they understand precisely what is happening and make targeted, committed changes, the transformation can be profound. So let's walk through the 4 most damaging masturbation mistakes that silently contribute to erectile dysfunction. And let's talk specifically about how to correct each one. Mistake number 1, relying on adult content every single time. Let me begin with the habit that is perhaps the most widespread and simultaneously the most underestimated in terms of its long-term damage. Using pornographic videos or explicit images as a mandatory prerequisite every single time you masturbate. On the surface, it seems harmless. It's private. It's immediately accessible. The content is endless in variety, always novel, always escalating in intensity. It is, by design, built to be maximally stimulating at all times. But the biology of what happens beneath the surface when you use it habitually is far more consequential than most men ever stop to consider. Your arousal system was not designed for this kind of input. Evolutionarily and neurologically, human sexuality is built to respond to real-world cues. The warmth and scent of another person. The anticipation that builds through genuine connection. The texture of touch. The imagination that engages memory and desire in organic, personal ways. These are the inputs your nervous system evolved to process and respond to. When you consistently replace those natural inputs with extreme, algorithmically optimized, on-demand visual stimulation, your brain adapts. But it adapts in exactly the wrong direction. Here's what happens in neurological terms. Every exposure to novel, highly stimulating content triggers a surge of dopamine in the brain's reward circuitry. That surge feels rewarding, so you seek it again. Over time, with repetition, the brain's reward system recalibrates. It raises the threshold of what qualifies as stimulating enough. What once produced a strong dopamine response no longer does. You need something more intense to get the same effect. This is tolerance, the same mechanism that underlies dependency on substances. And here is where the direct physical consequences emerge. Dopamine and nitric oxide work in concert to initiate the cascade of arousal that drives blood flow into erectile tissue. If your brain can no longer generate that cascade without extreme artificial stimulation, then in real-world situations, whether with a partner or even alone without a screen, the system fails to engage. Erections falter before they fully develop. Performance anxiety compounds the problem. Confidence erodes. The cycle accelerates. I've seen this pattern in men across a wide range of ages, but it becomes especially pronounced after 50, when the physiological buffer of high testosterone that compensated for many inefficiencies in younger years is no longer available. The brain needs clean, efficient arousal signals to function. If those signals have been corrupted by dependency on artificial stimulation, the gap in performance becomes undeniable. The correction requires intentional discipline. Step away from the screen systematically, not permanently, but deliberately and consistently. Give your brain the time and space it needs to recalibrate its baseline sensitivity. Practice natural arousal instead. Use your imagination. Return to memory. Focus your full attention on physical sensation. The sensations of your own body, your breath, your touch. Initially, this will feel less intense. Your response may be slower or weaker. That is not failure. That is the recalibration process in motion. It is evidence that your system is releasing its dependency. Persist. Within weeks, the shift becomes noticeable. Sensitivity returns. Natural arousal pathways re-engage. Erections become more spontaneous and reliable. Your brain begins to find real-world stimulation sufficient again. Your brain is your most powerful sexual organ. The question is whether you are training it with intention or allowing it to be conditioned by an algorithm designed to keep you dependent. Take that control back. Mistake number 2, misusing edging. The practice of deliberately bringing yourself close to climax and then intentionally backing off before release can be a genuinely valuable technique when applied correctly. It builds stamina. It develops body awareness and mastery over the arousal cycle. It can enhance the intensity of eventual release. Used with precision and moderation, it supports rather than undermines sexual health. But the way most men practice edging is causing real, measurable physiological harm. Here is where the damage occurs. When men push themselves right to the threshold of climax, that precise point of maximum arousal, and then abruptly stop, and then repeat that cycle again and again, sometimes for extended periods of an hour or more, they impose severe and cumulative strain on multiple physiological systems simultaneously. The pelvic floor muscles, which are critical players in both erectile function and ejaculatory control, are being recruited to maximum tension and then released abruptly, repeatedly, without ever completing the cycle they are designed to complete. Over time, this produces pelvic floor dysfunction. These muscles become either chronically hypertonic and uncoordinated, or simply exhausted beyond their capacity to respond reliably when needed. The neural circuits governing arousal and ejaculation become dysregulated as well. Repeatedly cycling through maximum stimulation and abrupt cessation sends contradictory signals to the nervous system. The result manifests as either an inability to climax in a timely and controlled fashion, or conversely, a hair trigger response that releases without adequate warning or control. Neither outcome is what any man is seeking. Vascular function is also compromised by prolonged, improper edging. Extended periods of near maximum arousal without completion create chronic vascular tension in the pelvic region. Sustained restriction of normal circulatory dynamics disrupts oxygen delivery to erectile tissue. Over time, this contributes to functional deterioration in the very tissue responsible for performance. The outcome is consistently the opposite of what men are seeking. Weaker, less reliable erections. Reduced sensitivity. Less control. Greater frustration. More dysfunction, not less. The correction is about precision and restraint. Balanced edging means pulling back not at the threshold, but well before it. You maintain awareness and a degree of control without taxing your system to its absolute maximum repeatedly. Limit sessions to 15 to 20 minutes. And critically, always allow your body to complete its natural release cycle at the conclusion. This is not a compromise. It is respecting the physiology you were given. When done with discipline and balance, edging is a genuine tool for developing stamina and control. When done without boundaries, it silently dismantles the very function you are trying to strengthen. Train with intention, not simply with intensity. Mistake number 3, rushing through it. Think back honestly to your 20s. What was the governing principle? Speed, efficiency, get there quickly, move on. And your body accommodated that approach with ease because testosterone was abundant, blood vessels were elastic, and nerve sensitivity was sharp. Your system could sprint to the finish line and recover within minutes without consequence. That biological reality changes after 50. And if your habits do not evolve with those changes, you create an increasingly damaging mismatch between what your body requires and what you are actually giving it. After 50, blood vessels are less elastic and require more time to fully dilate. Nitric oxide production decreases. Testosterone levels have declined from their peak. Nerve endings in the pelvic region carry diminished inherent sensitivity. Your erectile tissue genuinely needs more time, more deliberate circulation, and more complete oxygen delivery to fully engorge and maintain the firmness that defines a strong erection. When you rush, you short-circuit that entire process. The erectile tissue never fully fills with blood. Oxygen delivery is interrupted before it reaches completion. Erections are partial, short-lived, and unsatisfying. And here is what makes this pattern particularly harmful over time. Each rushed, incomplete cycle reinforces itself as the new default. You are actively conditioning your body to expect and produce a lesser response. You are training yourself for mediocrity, one session at a time. The solution is both physiologically sound and immediately accessible. Slow down. This is not a soft suggestion. This is a clinical intervention in the most practical sense. When you breathe deliberately during arousal, deep diaphragmatic inhalation through the nose, slow controlled exhalation through the mouth, you directly stimulate nitric oxide production in the blood vessel walls. Nitric oxide is the primary molecular signal that causes arterial smooth muscle to relax, blood vessels to dilate, and blood to flood the erectile chambers with pressure and volume. It is the biological foundation of a strong, sustained erection. And you can meaningfully influence its production simply through how you breathe. When you consciously release muscular tension rather than clenching through the process, you remove compression from pelvic blood vessels and allow circulation to flow freely through the entire region. Tension restricts flow. Relaxation opens it. This is not philosophy. This is vascular mechanics. When you allow arousal to build gradually and organically, rather than forcing it forward, you create the vascular conditions for full, deep engorgement. An erection built slowly, supported by complete circulation, is physiologically superior in every measurable way to one forced through a rapid, tense, compressed process. The downstream effects compound over time. When you train your body consistently to operate at this more deliberate pace, you rebuild the physiological infrastructure of strong erectile function from the ground up. Erections become more reliable. Climax becomes more complete and deeply satisfying. Intimacy becomes an experience rather than a performance under pressure. Every time you slow down and breathe with intention, you make a deposit into your long-term sexual health. Those deposits accumulate. Over weeks and months, the returns become unmistakable. Mistake number 4. The death grip. This is the habit men are least willing to acknowledge. But in terms of long-term consequences to nerve function and sensitivity, it may be the most damaging of all 4 mistakes I've discussed today. I'm referring to what is commonly called the death grip. The consistent use of excessively tight pressure and fast, aggressive friction during masturbation. In the immediate moment, this technique produces intense stimulation. The brain receives a powerful signal. The response is strong and rapid. So the pattern is reinforced, repeated, and eventually habituated. But the cumulative biological cost of this habit, built over months and years, is both significant and critically, largely reversible, if you are willing to do the work. Here's the physiology. Penile tissue is densely populated with specialized mechanoreceptors, nerve endings calibrated specifically to detect light touch, subtle pressure variations, warmth, and nuanced sensation. These receptors are the same ones that respond during natural intimacy with a partner. They are exquisitely sensitive by design, because that sensitivity is the physiological basis of genuine pleasure. When you subject these receptors repeatedly to extreme compression and aggressive friction, the nervous system responds with adaptation. It downregulates receptor sensitivity to protect itself from chronic overstimulation. The mechanoreceptors become less responsive to light touch. Subtle sensation stops registering as meaningful. This is the biological explanation for why men who have practiced the death grip for years find themselves unable to climax under normal circumstances, with a partner or with lighter stimulation, yet can still respond strongly when recreating that specific, unnatural level of intensity. The body has been conditioned to a standard it was never designed to meet. Vascular consequences compound the damage further. Sustained tight compression restricts blood flow within erectile tissue over the course of each session. Repeated over years, this restriction can contribute to microstructural changes that progressively compromise the tissue's ability to fully engorge during arousal. The rehabilitation pathway requires patience, but it is well established and it produces real results. Begin by reducing grip pressure deliberately and consistently. The sensation will feel diminished initially. Accept that without alarm. It is evidence of recalibration beginning. You are rehabilitating receptors that have been driven into relative insensitivity. The discomfort of reduced intensity is temporary. The restoration of sensitivity is lasting. Use lubrication throughout the rehabilitation period. This protects the tissue, reduces friction, and allows lighter touch to produce sufficient stimulation during the adjustment phase. This one simple change alone accelerates the process significantly. Introduce intentional variation in technique. Change your rhythm, your pace, your focal point, your pressure. Engaging different nerve pathways actively promotes the recovery of overall sensitivity across the entire system. Men who commit to this rehabilitation consistently, meaning weeks of disciplined, intentional practice, report outcomes that are genuinely transformative. Natural sensitivity returns in ways they had forgotten were possible. Erections become more reliably responsive to normal, real-world stimulation. Intimacy with a partner becomes genuinely pleasurable rather than mechanically pursued. The compulsive need for unnatural pressure fades as the nervous system restores its natural baseline calibration. Releasing the death grip is not a loss. It is a full reclamation of what was always rightfully yours. Your complete roadmap forward let me bring all of this together with the clarity it deserves. Because information without direction is just noise. The 4 mistakes: habitual reliance on pornographic content, improper edging without boundaries, rushing through the process, and the death grip. Each of these, individually, disrupts blood flow, nerve function, and hormonal response. Together, they compound into a pattern of dysfunction that deepens silently over time, unless it is actively and deliberately addressed. The 4 corrections: practice natural arousal without artificial dependency. Apply balanced, measured edging within defined time limits, and always complete the natural release cycle. Slow down and breathe with intention to support full vascular engagement. Reduce grip pressure, use lubrication, and commit to sensory rehabilitation over weeks of consistent practice. None of these corrections require medication. None require medical procedures. They require awareness, discipline, and consistency applied over time. That is the medicine available to every man in this conversation, regardless of age, regardless of how long the wrong habits have been reinforced. And beyond the mechanics, I want to say something that I believe matters as much as any physiological detail I've shared today. If you have been struggling with performance, if intimacy has become a source of anxiety rather than connection, if confidence has diminished in this area of your life, hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not beyond recovery. You are not too old. You have been given consistent inputs that led to consistent dysfunction. That can be changed. The body responds logically to what it receives. Change the inputs with consistency, and the body changes its response. That is not hope. That is biology. I have witnessed men in their 60s and 70s restore meaningful function, sensitivity, and genuine confidence through exactly these kinds of disciplined habit corrections. Not through medication alone, through understanding what was wrong and systematically addressing it with commitment and patience. That possibility belongs to you as well. Imagine approaching intimacy with confidence instead of dread, feeling present and fully engaged rather than anxious and disconnected, experiencing genuine deep pleasure instead of muted mechanical sensation, feeling proud of your performance, feeling connected to yourself and to your partner in the way that you deserve. That is not a privilege reserved for younger men. That is a physiologically achievable reality for any man who commits to the right habits with enough consistency and patience to see them through. Gentlemen, your health, your confidence, and your vitality are not finished. They are waiting for you to reclaim them. Here is my challenge. Choose one correction from today's video and begin tonight. Just one. Step away from the screen. Slow down and breathe. Loosen your grip. Choose the one most relevant to your situation and start there. Because every step you take in the right direction sends a clear signal to your body. I am not surrendering. I am investing. I am choosing vitality, and I am choosing strength. When that investment is made consistently, the results will speak for themselves. Firmer erections, deeper pleasure, renewed confidence, a vitality that makes you feel fully and powerfully like yourself again. If today's video gave you real value, hit the like button, subscribe for more evidence-based men's health content, and share this with a man you know who needs to hear it. This knowledge has the power to change lives, but only when it reaches the right people. I'm Dr. Ottawal Morgan. Your best performance is not behind you. It is ahead of you. I'll see you in the next video.